There we are. Now we're live. Hello and welcome to Corner Comics, your mostly weekly comic book reading club. My friends and I get together, we have a few issues, we share those issues with each other, then we talk about those issues. Gentlemen, it's Sunday. We've got 6 books. This is episode 52. We've officially been doing this for a full year's worth of weeks. How are you, and where can people find you on the interwebs?
I am amazing. And you can find me at EmmanuelTheStory.com. Also, cornercomics.net. And lastly, Instagram, EM_MAN_YOU_EL.
And I am Sparkly. And you can find me at Walrus as on Twitter at WALLRUSS. You can also find me at blacksuperherofan.com, as well as here at Corner Comics, the podcast, and cornercomics.net.
All right. So, in honor of episode 52, I thought it would be cool to do a new 52 episode, or talk about DC's new 52. In conversations that we've had offline, Russ, you weren't so keen on that idea, though.
Nope.
What specifically about it is that you do not like about the new 52?
Okay. You know how Emmanuel likes those books and characters that you know are not going to last?
Okay.
The entire new 52 is not going to last. In fact, it's already been rewritten. As of right now, nothing about the new 52 is canon.
Okay.
Right? We just had another crisis, so it's all been erased.
Yeah, this is true.
You'll notice throughout the course of this episode how I'll fall in love with every one of these characters and express my love to you about all of these characters, which
yes. Yeah, so basically the new 52 was made for Emmanuel.
Do you guys still think it's a good jumping on point for new DC readers?
Absolutely not. Nothing you read is going to be in canon. No, it's not a good jumping on point.
Okay.
I think it is. I beg to differ. Simply because it's the world of fiction. You'll say this is like Marvel's What If. This is a world of fiction where this world didn't last, but look at this story. Look at this take on this hero. And it's so small, so they can do a deep dive into the new 52, see a version of their character that they really like, and then go into the main continuity and see a different version of that character.
That they don't like. No, it's like saying What If is a jumping on point for Marvel Universe. No, it's not.
It was for certain characters.
It's What If. You have to have the original story in order for What If to be valid. Right? You have to have another, because What If is a take on an original story. And so if you jump on the take on it, then you miss the original story and you don't know it going into the regular universe.
That's not necessarily the case, because if I were first introduced to not Spider-Man, but that one spider that was a super villain, a hero, whatever, if I didn't know Spider-Man beyond that and I saw that wouldn't lessen my affection for Spider-Man.
But it wouldn't enhance it either, because it's not related. It's its own pocket universe. Mm-hmm. It's not related. If you like Spider-Man, you're gonna like Spider-Man anyway. This jumping on point, Spider-Man doesn't make you like Spider-Man.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
I'm not saying it's so. If you just want a story that didn't happen in the universe, fine. But I don't think it actually brings more people to the universe. I think it's just a nice story if you're interested. But then again, you like a dead end stories. So yes, for you, but you were already a fan of Spider-Man before reading the other Spider-Man. You were already a fan of these other things before reading this.
I will say, not being a huge DC guy, I did find some good stories inside of the new 52 stuff. So that is what I have decided to bring this week. The 2 issues that I have: Earth 2 number 6. This is the 2011 run, obviously. and Secret Origins number 11 from 2015, which was the second wave of New 52 books. Russ, you've sort of brought an old school
Yeah, since we're bringing
counterpoint.
books that don't matter, I brought an imaginary story. I brought this imaginary story because in the old days, Superman had 112 powers. Superman could bench press the planet Earth. He could fly in hyperspatial speeds. He had a super intellect. He even had super ventriloquism. He even had super hypnotism. He's even had super shape changing. And there's even a comic where he shot tiny Superman out of his hands to go and fight evil. So that was the ridiculous. That was Superman. This story, though imaginary story, is the end of that. It tells what happened to that Superman. So if you were ever a fan of that old school Superman, you wonder, where did he go? Why don't we talk about him anymore? This story and these two books are the first and the last book that tell the story of whatever happened to Superman. That, Superman that basically was the entire Justice League. And I don't even know why he teamed up with them. These two books, I don't remember what year, but so these two books are the books that
you've got Superman Volume 1, number 423, and Action Comics Volume 1, number 583. I believe 1986.
Sounds about right.
So they would be 34 years old.
Yeah, as old as most of our viewers.
Or as old as at least one of our hosts.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. And Manuel, which two books do you have?
All right, both took place in 2011. The first is Animal Man, Volume 2, issue number 1. And the second one is Teen Titans, Volume 4, issue number 1. All the New 52.
Nice. All right, so let's jump into it. We got Earth 2, issue number 6. The reason that I went with issue 6 was I was reading this entire first arc of Earth 2, and I had a hard time saying issue 1 would be a good issue, issue 2 would be a good issue 3 would be a good issue. I just kept reading through. I figured 6 wraps up the first little story, and it ends on a big battle. So I thought it would be a good point. But I do have to say, I think this first arc and all the first 6 issues is sort of a good story. It tells the story of these alternate dimension heroes, Jay Garrick, Alan Scott, and is it Adam Man or Mr. Adam? I can't remember what his name is exactly.
It's the Atom.
Just the Atom.
Mm-hmm. The original Atom.
And sort of what happens in a world where Superman and Wonder Woman have died. So that's Earth 2. What did you guys think of this issue?
You better go.
All right. So I really enjoyed this issue. I read this a while back, I think when it first came out in 2011. Seeing a young Jay Garrick, that was amazing to me. I'm already a Flash fan, but seeing Jay Garrick not seasoned, he doesn't really know anything about his powers. This is him just starting. Granted, this is a different Jay Garrick altogether. This is Earth 2's Jay Garrick, but seeing any Jay Garrick just starting his Flash career was appealing to me. That drew me in. That was as Russ mentioned, he really likes to read a comic where he can identify with the character. That was my identifying character, was Jay Garrick, because everything was new to him. And this whole New 52, Earth 2 thing was new to us as well. So we followed him along for the ride. He was kind of our window into this world. And it was interesting. I really like this not post-apocalyptic, but post-superhero. They call themselves Wonders, I think. So after the Wonders died, there weren't any superheroes for a while, but then it came about again, this resurgence. So this was nice. This was good. I even like the story of Green Lantern, how Alan Scott really endeared himself to me in this whole arc here.
He's kind of a dick, but yeah.
I liked
That's
it though. It gave him some dimensions because as of right now, I just know him from the Justice Society and not much other than he was the first.
Yeah, that's fair.
So this was good. This was a good run. I really liked Jay Garrett. He's the shining star in all this. I had a hard time connecting with Hawk Girl. Um,
Well,
I think I was around.
she doesn't really get much of an origin in the first little few issues.
No.
What how do you feel about the costume designs? Because that was kind of what drew me in.
Yes to the costume designs. I like the reimagining. I really liked it. It told the story for characters we knew before, but a reimagining, and that's exactly what that costume was, a reimagining. The helmet itself with the visor, I like it only because it's a whole different world. It's not, he's not trying to be a Flash that we know, or even the Jay Garrett we know. It's a whole new thing. And because it's a whole new thing, I can accept it. I like the design. The green, or not green, the blue and red, other than just red and yellow, I think that was a nice touch to show like he will be in place of Superman. He'll kind of be the moral right because he has the quintessential blue and um, red. But yeah, all in all, good. I like the art. The action was fair. It wasn't knock your socks off. The plot was serviceable. I I wanted this to last longer than it did, obviously.
All right, Russ.
all right. Here we
Let's hear
go.
it.
Let's start with what I liked. I like the art and colors. This is a DC, definitely a DC book. It follows the DC manner in its vibrant colors. Uh, uh, and there's something about the art that you can just look at it and see it's DC. Right. So at least when they went out for this, they didn't fake the funk on the art. Right.
Yeah.
I do like the costumes. Right. Now you have to know that I am a fan of Earth 2, sort of has always been. So there's a lot of licenses they took when they went a whole different direction. Like Green Lantern is basically a Swamp Thing. His powers come from the Earth like Swamp Thing does here.
Right.
But in the original comics, he was the original Green Lantern. He had a ring. He had the whole, you know what I mean? This is not that. There's no ring. Right. So there's that issue. And where his powers come from is different. I don't even think I think he's one of those characters that they made gay after the fact also. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't gay back then. And then you have the Flash, Jay Garrick, whose powers did not come from a god in any of earlier Earth 2 incarnations. He was a scientist and got his powers from some element called hard water. In which he smelt the fumes and it took him under and it gave him super speed.
Right.
Right. So very different here, right? And the Atom in the original Atom in the comics, you know, he's called the Atom because he was 5 feet tall, but he had the might and heart of a 7 foot tall man, right? And that was it at first. And then later on, he got some radiation, you know, because that's what you need to get powers of some kind of radiation. And then he got what was called an atomic punch, so he could summon that radiation, Goku style, and then hit somebody with the power of that radiation, right? He was never Giant Man, but they changed that here. So there's a lot of creative license here. Solomon Grundy was always a zombie, but he never looked more zombie than he does in this book.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of the creative license. If you change where these people get their powers from, you change something fundamentally about who they are, right? Not saying that this Jay Garrick was not a likable character. It's just that this is not anything like the Jay Garrick. This is an entirely new character. Just happens to have that name. You might as well have Stan Lee says, well, now I'm creating another new Flash, and I'm just going to use the name, but everything's going to be different.
Right.
So I was not a fan of where they took it. They could have just called it a different Earth. They just, I feel as a DC purist, kind of blaspheme against the original Earth too. But I accepted it because it's not my toys. right? You took away Jay Garrick's helmet and you gave him a new kind of helmet that I guess is reminiscent of a more current time, whatever. I guess I can accept that. It's not the hat that I'm used to, that I always wondered how he kept it on his head.
Right.
But, and Green Lantern has no lantern and no ring. Hawker,
He
at
has a
least,
ring.
he has a ring. You sure?
Well,
Mhm.
it's. I
I think it's his wedding ring to that other dude.
yeah, like
It doesn't have power.
it like manifests. Yeah, it manifests his powers, but it's not. It's not a ring in the same sense as the original.
So putting all of that to the side and just saying, well, let's shake up the box of toys and let somebody else play with them. This was not bad. Jess J. Garrick is a compelling character as an entry character into this universe. Even when you look back at the history, and in this history, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman died, so new characters had to rise. Right, the holy trinity of DC were not available here.
Yeah, and that'll
When
happen
you
in
look
the
at
first issue.
the comics, the old Earth 2 comics, which took place originally in World War II, after that time, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman sort of retired. But these characters were still going. So this Green Lantern, Alan Scott, was sort of the leader, right? He's a big media mogul. He has a lot of money, he has a lot of power outside of his ring. So he was sort of de facto leader. When you look at Earth 2, you always see Jay Garrick as an old dude because he was around that time. But Superman, Batman, Aquaman were out of it. They instead had their proteges. Robin was a grown ass man, still Robin, not Nightwing. Superman, his cousin, Supergirl, now became Power Girl. Who else? Wonder Woman had a daughter. There's a whole bunch of, other characters. So now they're trying to go back to this. Well, they tried. And I'm going to say the story in and of itself, like a sci-fi epic, this arc, because I read all of these. It was interesting. I knew they would go away, though. I knew they would go away from the very beginning. But I just said, let me just enjoy it. If you care, GC is bringing back the Justice Society. They're going to be called the Justice Society of Earth.
Okay.
Instead of just Society of America, because why are they all American? Why they have to be just America? And most of these characters will come back, as well as the legacy characters. In fact, some of the legacy characters can be seen in some of the new issues that show the current future of DC, future state, I think they're calling it now, where they have a new Wonder Woman, where they show some Green Lantern's children, because he has 2 children. So all in all, this book, this one issue, not bad, worth a read, looks good. This is not a jumping on point to the DC universe at all, but this is a good story that takes place in the DC omniverse, right? A story that has no relevance on the Superman that but still a good story, still looks good, still drawn nicely, and at least in the case of the Flash, is an interesting character.
All right, cool. So unless you guys have any final thoughts.
Nope.
All right, my second issue, Secret Origins number 11. The reason that I went with this book over all of the other preceding 10 issues was because this one has the secret origin of John Constantine, and it also has the secret origin of Guy Gardner. We've always known that Guy Gardner was an asshole, but now we get to see why he was an asshole. What did you guys think of this book?
Constantine, by far my favorite part of the 3. Also, the secret origin of Black Canary, how she got to be the Black Canary instead of Canary, how she got her powers. Out of all those 3 stories, the John Constantine is my favorite. Weirdly enough, though, I don't think that's the most interesting. The most interesting is the Green Lantern one, or the Red Lantern one, the Guy Gardner. That's only more interesting to me because I've never delved into his past before to find out why he is the way he is. So that was of interest, and that satisfied a desire I never knew I had. It doesn't make me like Guy Gardner more. It just informs more about who he is, in my opinion. And I really think that him turning into, spoiler alert, it's 2011, so if it's a spoiler, get over it.
Yeah.
The fact that he turns into a Red Lantern fits a lot better than him being a Green Lantern. Yes, he has a strong will to be such a jackhole consistently, but like he's an angry one at that. So all that rage, pent up frustration, I think it manifests a lot better with him being a Red Lantern. And plus, he is a redhead, right?
Yep.
Yeah, with the bowl cut and just an awful haircut. But yeah, him having red hair, that it looks a lot better. And he has a goatee and a beard. It makes him look a lot more badass. Him being a Red Lantern than a Green, personality wise as well. So I'd say this issue was overall interesting. I like the art. The John Constantine, that was good. I enjoyed this. This is a solid read.
Oh, shall I?
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't like the art. The art is okay at best. None of these stories matter. How you see John Constantine, and did they really say how John Constantine was raised, or did they say it might be one of these three stories we tell?
There's the unreliable narrator in
Right.
this instance.
So there's the unreliable narrator. I think Guy Gardner was always interesting because he was abused. He had dealt with all of that. And yet and still, he actually is a good guy, just a dick. And yes, for a time he was a Red Lantern, but now we're in a new DC universe and he's not a Red Lantern anymore. He's Green. So just so you know, whether you think this fits, it's gone. And what's this? He got a beard and goatee? That's gone too. Ain't none of that happened. But as a story about that character, and the origin will probably change also, it was an interesting story. So I'll say this: the stories were interesting, except for Black Canary. That ain't nothing that has anything to do with Black Canary. You got to know that Black Canary originally came from Earth 2. Her mother was an Earth 2 superhero and then crossed over to Earth 1. And this Black Canary was born on Earth 1, but her mother was the original Black Canary. They just threw all that away, threw all that continuity away to tell this story that, to me, didn't make her really as compelling as a hero. It didn't make her compelling. His legacy is she's just trying to find her place in the world. It really just made her sort of a younger adventurer, but more like a 20-year-old, 25-year-old kid who just, out there trying to be adventurous, who has some power, but it doesn't make her a good person. It doesn't make her somebody that you may need to follow unless you just like her tragic story. But if you go back to the original Black Canary and what she went through in order to become a hero, and how she was mentored in not necessarily the best way by her mother, who was the original Black Canary, I think that made a much more compelling story. What it seems like all this New 52 did was just rewrite all the continuity. So you could just say, whatever you thought you knew, that's gone. This is what it is now. And if this ain't enough for you, too bad. Because, and so I found the stories to be interesting, even though they are not canon. And I found the art to be fair to middling. But if you're just interested for a take on these characters that is not the normal take of any of these Creed characters, not a bad book to read. Worth a read.
I like that Amanda Waller was introduced as well. That was a nice little tidbit.
They skinnied up Amanda Waller for the New 52, right?
Mm.
All right. Of course, now the New 52 is over. She's back to being heavyweight, but they skinnied her up and made her like the CW Amanda Waller.
How did you guys feel about all of the monologue that was happening in this book? Because there was a lot of it. It seemed to be the characters themselves telling the story rather than.
Well, that didn't bother me because that directs me from that sort of, it helps tell the story. If I just look at the pictures, if I just hear the regular spoken dialogue, I might not have gotten what all they wanted me to get.
Okay.
So it makes sense. It's a story being told. I didn't have any negative reaction to it at all.
Same.
I did like the Grifter cameo in the Black Canary story. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, they're trying to bring the Grifter now into the Batman universe.
I would love to see frickin' Wildstorm come back and them do Wildcats and all that stuff again. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but
I hope so too.
yeah. All right, so those are my 2 books. I'm glad that you guys got something out of it. Russ, your first issue.
Okay, so these are old books. 86, right? So how long ago was that? 40 years ago?
34, yeah.
30 something years ago? Okay. So knowing that, be kind or not. So again, this is the story of the closing of the book of that Superman who had 1,052 powers. Many of them nonsensical, but this is the Superman we know. This is Superman we read. This was the Brainiac we know. This is the story, or at least this first book, and the second book is a closing book. This is the story of what happened to that Superman in that universe. Why he no longer exists, why he's not the Superman we know anymore, why we have a different one. It closes what happened to all the main characters you may have cared about, including Legion of Superheroes, Supergirl, Bizarro, Luthor. All of their stories are told or also ended in this pair of books. There's my intro. What do you guys think?
All right. I will say that I really enjoyed both books. The first one, I probably enjoyed just slightly more than the second one and how it ends. You got to say, Alan Moore is one of those guys that he's defined by his Swamp Thing run, by The Watchmen, and by V for Vendetta, right? But this is a Superman Alan Moore story. Like, Alan Moore wrote Superman. This is crazy. So I think that needs to be mentioned, and I think that this is sort of like a fanboy checklist, right?
Yes.
So DC went to Alan Moore like, all right, what do you want to do with Superman? He's like, well, I want to have Bizarro. I want to have Lex Luthor and Brainiac. I want to have, you know what I mean? There's like a checklist of stuff that he needed to get done. He got it done in 2 issues. This is also definitely a callback to that style of comic book and that style of writing. So it's very verbose. There's a lot of text here. That's the way they wrote back in the days. Like, this is Alan Moore's, Chris Claremont. It's that style, which I enjoyed. And you have George Perez doing the art, who is arguably just as influential as Jack Kirby or John Buscema. You know, how they defined the Marvel art, George Perez defined the DC art. So keeping it to this single issue here, this is goofy as all hell. This is ridiculous that a bunch of homicidal action figures are going to be the thing that reveals who Clark Kent actually is and destroys his secret identity. It was still really fun. It's kind of crazy how that gets wrapped up in like just a page and a half. Like, all right, those villains are done. Now we have to deal with the fact that Superman is Superman and Clark Kent doesn't exist anymore. And yeah, you then have the remnants of Brainiac merging with Lex Luthor. That's the most crazy, most insane, most like take 2 of the most powerful supervillains of all time and merge them together as one. We'll get to what happens in the second issue and why I think it's hilarious. But this first issue, it's set up nicely. It's got all the goofy stuff, like you were saying, from that era. I mean, Superman, he creates static electricity for the Daily Planet's like globe that's on top of the building, and just to suck up all of the villains. It's insane.
Just another power.
Yeah, and Alan Moore's like, oh yeah, I also want the Legion of Superheroes, so let's throw them in here too. Definitely worth the read. I highly enjoyed this, Emmanuel.
Okay. This tried to pull at my heartstrings, and it did not accomplish its goal. I could see someone maybe reading it in its time, the time it came out in '86, really feeling this, but I did not. As Matt mentioned, the goofiness of these Superman bots coming and exposing Clark Kent to be Superman on national TV, and I think where the cameras running, maybe the cameras weren't running, but in front of his friends.
Yeah,
Like
it was at the Daily Planet, right? So
okay, yeah, in front of everyone that he knows. So everyone knows now that Clark Kent is Superman. But oh yeah, Pete Ross is dead in a box. His childhood friend is dead in a box. Like yes, Superman does lament. He screams no, and like he has this angst about him. But then
We moved on.
Yep.
he's Superman. He has to keep being Superman. He can't grieve and mourn like he would like to, I guess. And he goes and fights Toyman and I think the Tinker, not the Tinker because that's Marvel, but the Toyman and Prankster. So he goes on to wrap that up, and then you have like skip down further between Brainiac and Lex Luthor, which is insane. And Matt, you touched on that. But also, when all those the sleeper agents activate the like Metallo
Metallobots.
men,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
yeah.
Metallobots.
Metallo
Yeah.
When they activate, one is getting hit on by a hooker.
Yeah.
I love that they added that. I love it. Like, oh, it's just a random place in Metropolis that hookers are, out in the daylight just trying to make a quick buck. And it turns out he's a Metallo man, so he goes out and tries to kill Superman. This is ridiculous, and I'm here for it. But I didn't really feel. I laughed, but I didn't really feel sad that Pete Ross died. And they had an introduction or a reintroduction to Supergirl, and she died in this timeline. So Superman is kind of questioning Brainiac 5 about like why did you bring her here? She's died, and now I have to put on airs and not tell her. And then he mourns at the last issue because of everything that's going down. I wanted to feel grieved with him, but I just couldn't.
I didn't think you would because you weren't a fan of that Superman universe. That was before your,
I guess so.
right? You don't really care about this Superman. You don't care about somebody with 11 million powers and all those other things because that's not the Superman you read, really. You know what I mean? You were aware of him. So his foolishness and the foolishness of that era, because this era really does go back, maybe 50 years,
Right.
where all this was happening, where Lois Lane was always trying to prove Clark Kent was Superman, where she was always in a rivalry between her and Lana Lang. This is sort of a 50 years of history or more of that Superman that you probably didn't read. But for those of us who did read it, there was something else there for us beyond the funny. And I think it brought that to us, but I understand why it didn't get that way for you. I don't think even this Legion of Superheroes were the Legion of Superheroes,
Yeah, talking about the 11 million powers. I love how they just throw it in there like, oh yeah, Superman can see radio waves. You didn't know that?
Yep.
It's quintessential in its
Okay.
time. It delivered with what it promised.
Yeah, that was
Alright.
interesting. So they bring Supergirl back, right? From the future, from the Legion of Superheroes time.
Mm-hmm.
But she is this post crisis? Because she is
yes.
dead, right?
Well, yeah. Supposedly it's post-crisis.
Okay.
So again, an imaginary story, so everything doesn't fall into perfect place.
Right.
But it does give it that bookend.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on this first issue before we move on to the continuation and end of the story?
Nope.
All right. Action Comics 583. Man, you want to start?
I will start. Okay. So this I actually liked better than the first one. contrary to you, man. Like I actually enjoyed this wrap up. Like, how do you kill a Superman with all these amazing powers? You don't really kill him; you just depower him, make him human. And this speaks to the character of Clark Kent, less so Superman and less so Kal-El. He is Clark Kent. That's who he is in his core, at his heart. That's who he was raised to be. So they mentioned about him doing like normal human everyday things, and he loves that. He enjoys just being a human, which makes him different than just about any other superhero. He's that reluctant, the most powerful of them all, but one of the most reluctant and yet duty bound of them all, because he would be happy with having zero powers, living an ordinary life, maybe even on his farm somewhere. If he never had the ambition to go to Metropolis, and I make the argument that it's his powers that made him ambitious. He would have been happy had he had no powers, just being a farm boy, loving Lana and loving his life on the farm and continuing his days there. But knowing that he's destined for greater, knowing that he has all these powers, he has to be the man of tomorrow. He has to be the man of steel. So he went to Metropolis to do the most good there in Lois Lane instead of Lana Lane. But this was good. I like the fact that they killed him off by just making him normal, and a little nod and a wink because his son is still super powered because he's over there playing with coal and making it into a diamond. So that this can't happen again. Like that little Jonathan can become John. So this was good.
All right. So I missed how they found the Fortress of Solitude. And I think it's crazy that Lana Lang's like, oh, I'm just going to take a dip in these spirits here and I'm going to get superpowers and then I'm going to kill Lex Luthor. I'm going to chop him. I'm going to karate chop him in the neck.
Well, that's part of the legacy of this is how she got those powers before. Right. So she already knows that what the lake will do. And she has to try to save the day because you can't tell this story without saying what happens to Lana Lang.
Right.
Right. So, and she has to be relevant in some way. And then you got Jimmy Olsen, who's had an infinite number of different superpowers and all the different stories he's ever had chosen to be Elastic Lad and uses stretchy powers because, of course, that's the powers you want to save the day with. And so then Lana also finds out that she's not the one Clark really loves. It's always going to be Lana. And we get that because that was always a rivalry that was never fully resolved until this book. So what I also like that you guys may not have noticed is the cameo of the different superheroes that show up in a panel here and there. You have Wonder Woman, you have Shazam, but you also have Superwoman. That is not Supergirl. Notice that.
I did not notice that.
Okay, so after, let me see. Before Mxyzptlk shows himself, excuse me for not knowing the right way to pronounce Mxyzptlk.
Oh, that's the other thing
ever
too.
know that?
That's like that was on Alan Moore's checklist. He's like, well, I gotta have Mxyzptlk in there too. So he's got to be a villain.
So when you see all the superheroes sort of wrapping up after they beat everybody, right? You see different heroes, Batman and Robin, Shazam, Vartox, who you may not all know. But you also see...
she's got the blue...
No, Vartox's a dude.
No,
Vartox,
Superwoman.
Yeah, the Superwoman, yes. Yeah. She only exists in that continuity. She doesn't exist in current continuity. And she's not Kryptonian.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So if you want to do a deep dive, I'm going to say that her last name is probably Lane. And I'm going to leave it at that. If you care to look that up, the history of Superwoman, that is not Supergirl or Power Girl. There's an entire story, and she only shows up a few times, but she does have her own book. You might be interested in that. So I liked it, those little things, and the fact that they were included, which means whoever wrote this really knows all of that Superman lore. Because when you finish this, you don't have any questions about any of the heroes or villains, do you? Anything you ever know, anybody ever fought Superman that was in his life, you understand what happened to them, right? It's a definitive closure.
Down to
And I
crypto.
like that. What's that? Even crypto.
Down to crypto.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Mixoplick in the end, everybody. Like whoever he fought that was ever worthy of his time has been dealt with.
Yeah.
And then he does that wink in the end that only happens in the Superboy animated series. I like that too. So again, this is a closure. These probably books are not as easy to find, but then again, they may be in a bargain bin somewhere as they are imaginary stories. But Alan Moore, George Perez, how can you go wrong, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like these older books. I think the older I get, the more I like digging further and further back because there's a bunch of stuff that I've missed growing up, you know. So I really appreciated you bringing this. Also, this is of interesting note. DC used to be on 666 Fifth Avenue in New York.
Wow. And that's immortalized in the book. Yes,
Yeah.
immortalized in the book.
It's in the it's in the indicia, I think is what they call that little portion. So this was really good. I tasked you with bringing some stories that were not New 52 that would be good stories, and we got a great Superman story. So
all right, good. I was wondering because I said I ain't bringing the 52 stuff, but since but I can bring a good, because you guys are really not DC people like I am, so I needed to bring you something that would say, hey, because I feel like these kind of books wouldn't really happen with Marvel, even though that's not necessarily true, because Marvel has done like Daredevil, The End, and some of these characters,
they've done
with a little less tongue in cheek.
Yeah, not quite as goofy, but all right. Moving on then, Emmanuel, your first issue.
My first issue is Animal Man, issue number 1, volume 2. Again, 2011. This is the story of Buddy Baker, the superhero activist and actor. Animal Man. He has been Animal Man for quite some time at this point. He has 2 beautiful children, a loving wife, good family man. But this issue is more of a horror issue. You have this character who can, if you're not familiar with Animal Man, he can tap into the animal field and pull strengths from or abilities from any animal he chooses. If he's having trouble sleeping, he can tap into the animal field and tap into the nap qualities or abilities of a cat. Should he need strength, he can summon the strength of an elephant or rhino or whatever. So that's how his powers work. You can do anything that an animal can do, and it doesn't. I don't think it drastically.
Animal Man does whatever an animal can.
It doesn't drastically change his outward appearance, but he can summon those abilities, and chaos ensues. What do you guys think?
So the artwork, I really enjoyed the artwork on this. This is this doesn't look or feel like any other book out there. It has a very unique tone to it. So that I immediately took away. We've had different Jeff Lemire books on here before. This is one that has been recommended to me that I have put off until now. So I'm glad that you brought this. I know this is probably one of the more notable runs for Animal Man, just because it does have that psychological horror aspect of it. I really enjoyed the juxtaposition of him being just a regular family man trying to be somebody who's not a superhero, but then gets that call to action to be a superhero again. So I thought that was really interesting. The powers that he has, how he can tap into the animal field, I thought that it's illustrated really cool. Because he goes to, so the setup for this is there's a crazy guy that's holding kids hostage at a cancer ward, who he's lost his own daughter and he's lost his mind consequently. Animal Man shows up. The guy shoots Animal Man. He summons the power of a rhino, but he has to go through the animals in his head to figure out what one will best suit him in this time. And it happens to be a rhino. And then just straight up clocks the dude. But yeah, I thought this was really well done. It also sets up, oh, maybe something's not quite right with his powers, or maybe there's something else going on here that we have to investigate further. It's not resolved in this issue and continues on. As a first issue, I thought it did a really nice job of just, here's everything that you absolutely need to know about this character. Here is the call to action. Here is the conflict that we're foreshadowing that's going to cause problems later on. This does it perfectly, and the artwork is there to really complement all of those elements. It's composed well. Overall, I think I'm going to continue reading this myself, and I might even dig around and see if I can find a loose issue. So, Russ, what are your thoughts?
Didn't like it. Here's the thing. Buddy Baker, Animal Man, is just not a likable dude in this book. He's just a dude just sort of barely getting by. Like if you and I had the powers of Animal Man, we'd be doing more than barely getting by. But it seems like he's just. I
don't feel like he's just barely happy. I don't feel like he's just barely getting by. I mean,
well, he even talks in the beginning of, well, I hope the film does well. Otherwise, it's just going to be an indie film and we won't see any money, right? I'm just sitting here looking over. What are his interests? What is he doing? Even in the very beginning, where he's just looking at, I guess, the script for the movie or whatever. But there's nothing about him that says this is a guy I want to follow and I care about. His daughter is way more interesting.
Well, I think that's part of the setup of the story, though, right?
Yeah.
So,
but he's not. He's not. Like, if his family wasn't in this and it was just a book about him, I don't think this book would be compelling. They didn't really make him compelling. Now, I can stand him up to another character with the same powers in the same universe, Vixen.
Okay.
Same powers, right? Vixen got no problem just pulling on whatever animal she needs. She'd be like, what animal should I use while this bullet is coming at me? I don't know, dog. No, right? You see what I'm saying? He's not a smart guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's not an especially capable guy. He's just a guy with the powers. That in and of itself is not interesting. Even if you look at, say, Guy Gardner's attitude and why he is that way is compelling. I didn't see anything in this book that showed that he was a compelling character. His situation might be, but he, not so much. And I've read this book and some of the issues after, and I just never found him to be that compelling. Second, this is more personal to me, I'm not really a fan of the horror. And this is not really a superhero book. This is a horror book. And as such, it's not going to hold my interest long anyway. Right? It's like what Swamp Thing went, because it's a similar universe. Swamp Thing went sheer horror, and then they sort of lost me. Right? Animal Man fighting with the Justice League is interesting. Animal Man in a horror book, for me, not so much.
Buddy Baker, I think his character, like in the beginning of the book, he's being interviewed by someone, I believe, at The Believer, which is a newspaper. And he details that he started out as a stuntman, and then like a Hollywood stuntman. And then when he got his superpowers, he just takes the opportunities as they present themselves. He doesn't have any great aspirations, any great goals. He's, as you said, Russ, he's just a guy with superpowers. He didn't have any aspirations to become one of the Justice League, one of the best superheroes out there. He'd be perfectly content with just being a family man. That's it.
It's addressed too, because his older son says that. So we should tape you and send it into the Justice League. He's like, no, I don't want to do that.
And so that is not okay. Let's say someone just wanted to write a book about a regular dude who wasn't trying to be nothing. We would never read that book. He just happens to have powers. Still the same dude. maybe we'll read it. But he's not that interesting. So
Yeah.
we have to put a horror. You see, all these things they had to do. He's almost. It might as well not be Animal Man. It might as well be the world around Animal Man, right? Because he's not the draw. He's not the I. You know, he's not. You know, he's not what you come to this book for.
Yeah. I mean, it works for me though because it is different from just a typical superhero story.
Well, it's not. It's not a superhero story at all, really.
Right. Well,
It's a horror story who happens to have elements of superpowers.
Yeah.
Right. So it might as well he could be just a magic user. So it's not it's not a superhero story at all. I'm not the greatest fan of Jeff Lemire's. Is he doing the art?
No, he's the writer. He did Black Hammer.
All right, and I like Black Hammer, but I can see some of those elements here. But yeah, it was just a fair to Midland book for me. I didn't. If you are open to horror, then there may be something here for you. If you don't care that the main character is just a milquetoast human being, there may be something here for you. But there wasn't enough here for me to say I should do more. Just me personally.
Okay.
So I can't recommend it.
I will say I feel like it doesn't go full horror until the last page.
Yeah.
When you see his daughter with all of the dead animals.
All right, and honestly, that was what made it interesting. Prior to that, I didn't think it was interesting. It was just, he's just a regular dude, just happened to be in the area. Let me use my seldom used animal powers to help you out and maybe don't die.
Yeah.
And then go on back home to my wife who loves me but not really enthused about me. Right?
Well, I don't know. He does have a few panels where he's talking about, he wouldn't be able to do a lot of these things or
Do you see the affection for them two together? Do you see the magic between now if I put Elongated Man and his wife in there, you would see the magic. Right? But there's no magic between these two. This does not appear to be a loving family.
Okay.
It just appears to be a family. So I didn't find that to be interesting. There's no chemistry. There's nothing suggested there's chemistry between the husband and wife at all. Yeah. It's just that they're in this together. So I was like, okay, another average marriage, an average house, an average something that I don't necessarily want to read. You know what I mean? Because if you're going to write a story, it's got to be more than just, it's got to be something to make you care about the characters. And I just didn't see anything that made me care about Buddy or his wife, especially if you've read more of these issues, you know how this goes.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that made it interesting really was the last panel. But that's my thought.
All right. Well, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Emmanuel, your second issue.
My second issue is Teen Titans, Volume 4, issue number 1. And this is the introduction of the Teen Titans, aptly named, where you see they haven't even made a group yet. I don't think Dick Grayson has made his yet either, but we're looking at the Robin, Tim Drake. Tim Drake is putting together, or in this issue, he's noting all these different superheroes, these teens that have popped on the scene, such as Kid Flash, Wally West, and Cassie, who is Wonder Girl.
Yeah.
And there's a few others that you'll see when he's surveying news reports. You see a mention of Miss Martian. You see mention of Static, and then I can see another one who I forget his name. He's in all purple as well. You even see Garfield Logan, Beast Boy. So he hasn't put together the team quite yet. He's surveying all these different encounters where all these are teens. So they're just starting out. And Tim Drake is the only successful one. He's the only real one with training. Everyone else is going about flashing, making matters worse, as indicated by Kid Flash being on the scene. And I don't even think he has a good connection with the original Flash just yet, Barry Allen. So as of right now, the Justice League haven't said that this is in relation to the real Flash. So he may not have met his mentor yet. Well, obviously he met him, but he may not have bonded and been trained by his mentor. So this is a foible mission, and he's really putting together the team. What do you guys think?
So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. Back in the 90s, Scott Lobdell was the writer for X-Men. He's the writer here too. But this feels like a 90s book to me, and I like it for that. From the artwork to the way that the story's laid out, all that. As Emmanuel was mentioning, you have Kid Flash that is just being super irresponsible and just running into a burning building and causing a backdraft and killing or nearly killing all of these firefighters. And then you have Tim Drake making note of all of these metahumans or superpowered humans that are young, and realizing that Nowhere is also seeking to go after all of these powered teens. And so it is a race to find all of these superpowered teens between Nowhere and Tim Drake, basically, right? Who can recruit him or find him first. I kind of enjoyed this. I don't like that he's called Red Robin. I don't know where that came from or why that has to be. Why can't he just be Robin? But whatever. The costume designs are cool. The artwork is great. Like I said, it feels like a 90s book. The way that the pencils are laid out, the way that the colors are done. This doesn't really feel like a DC book as much as it does just sort of, I guess, kind of in the way that you were saying, Russ, with Animal Man, how it's not really it doesn't feel superhero in the same way. This feels much different than the way that a normal Teen Titans book would be, I guess. But I liked it. I thought it was kind of cool. I liked the idea of, we have to go out and there's a race to find all of these kids and bring them together and convince them that they need to be on this team, rather than being scooped up by the enemy. So it was good. I think I'm probably going to read more just to see what happens. I know none of it matters and it's not going to be continuity, but maybe it's a good story along the way.
Okay. Here's my take. 90s book, like you say, I agree. Shiny DC 90s book, right? This is a way of making the characters new without backstory, really, right? Because you don't get any, like, where is this Flash? This might be Bart Allen for all I know, right?
Yeah.
Where does this Flash come from? Is this the first Robin in here? I don't know. And the story of Wonder Girl, you really don't know. And don't call me Wonder Girl. Yeah. And you really don't know if what her relationship is to. This is like, you used to read Teen Titans. These are all the same characters, but they're all different now.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell you how they're different over the next 12 books. But you're going to have to try to just enjoy it without knowing at all why they're behaving so strangely. That will also enable us to bring in new heroes because we can create new ones for this story. Whenever they try to erase all the backstory and fundamentally change the character, that bothers me. Like what they did with Kid Flash. There's no way the Flash would have let this guy run around with those powers. He would have stopped him. Right?
Yeah. I do think that it sets up why the bad guys are going after them, though, right? Because you do have a group of just wholly irresponsible.
I'm just looking for characters that interest me,
right?
Because this is a #1 issue. So the Kid Flash does not, right? The Robin guy does, because he always does. He has all the powers of Batman, all the mental powers of Batman, but is well adjusted as a human being, right?
Yeah.
So he's not a dick. So he's Batman not being a dick. So I can go with him. I can follow him. I care about him. Wonder Girl, I might care about because She has some fear about being discovered and keeping her identity, but she's still a badass when she needs to be. I might be interested in that, right? Uh, um, but it sort of, normally when you get, see, here's the thing. Teen Titans has a history, 50 years in the comics, really, in their own way, right?
Yeah.
They have a history, even if we just go back as far as George Perez to the new Teen Titans, right? And part of what makes them great is that legacy. And New 52 took away that legacy. And they're telling stories as if there are none. So I read it because I'm supposed to read it because I'm a Teen Titans fan. But ultimately, I did not continue with the series and that's why they redid it, right? That's why they redone after the New 52. They tried to bring all those things back that they took away, legacy, all these other things. That's why they rewrote DC Comics after that, Rebirth. That's
right.
what they,
Yeah,
so
Heroes Reborn.
and Rebirth brought all of the heart and the spirit of the characters and the love back into them, while still changing some of their story. It still brought back the things that made them great. I think some of the things that make them great are absent in this book. Looked good though, and I read it, and it's worth a read.
Do you think? All right, so to sort of wrap up the New 52 conversation as a whole, before we get into the links that we have in the roundtable, do you guys think that this would have been more successful if DC had done what Marvel did with the Ultimate books, where it was a separate imprint? It didn't fuck with the continuity.
It would. It might have, but here's the truth. Here's the problem. It didn't have any heart. Most of the New 52 didn't have heart. It was just sort of just telling the story. And that's one of the things that the Rebirth brought. It didn't have why you should like these characters. It stopped telling those stories. And once they did Rebirth, they told you why you should like them. And they doubled down on why you should like them. Right? Like if, say, I was the one who first created Batman, and then somebody else is writing Batman as a totally different dude, I'm going to be upset because of that, right? Because you're missing the essence of what makes him Batman. And so a lot of things in the New 52 miss the essence. There's a one of the books, the New 52, where they had a young Black Lightning teaming up with a young Blue Beetle, like 20-something ish.
Okay.
Both of them, right? And they missed one of the things that make Black Lightning great about his story, about his sacrifice, about what he was doing, trying to do in the world, because they just wanted to age them down and have these new characters and then move them forward from that place. But part of that continuity got lost. Part of that reason you should care got lost, and therefore that book didn't continue. And I think the reason why they changed it is because these books weren't good enough to continue. If they were good enough, they wouldn't have done the whole Rebirth thing, right?
Yeah.
They weren't good enough. And I don't think they would have worked necessarily even in an all-shoot universe. The Earth 2 book you bought worked better in an all-shoot universe.
Yeah.
Than most of these other New 52 stuff.
The one book that none of us brought or wanted to highlight was the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo Batman, Court of Owls. That came out of New 52. That was a successful story. But
yeah, but
Batman's always successful, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, I didn't want to bring just a straight Batman book because I felt like it was a bit of a cop-out.
Mm-hmm. It would have been.
Yeah.
I like the element that they had for Superboy. Superboy in this run is very unhinged, very much finding himself. And that's almost always the story for Superboy. But I think it was done really well here and kind of sort of copied in Young Justice. I could see some of the very same lash outs and mental disturbances and trying to find yourself in Young Justice that they have here, almost word for word in certain circumstances.
Okay. All right.
So it's I wanted to like it more because it's Teen Titans, and I have an affinity for Teen Titans. I love them. but I love their relationships. I love their individual challenges. I love that they really care about each other and are really, really friends, unlike the Avengers, who will just turn on each other in any second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even the Justice League will still turn on you if you don't look right in the media, right? But Titans is friends forever. Titans don't matter. We got you. We there. We in this. And whatever happens to you, we got you. So that means something to me.
All right. Moving on, we have a roundtable item. Superhero Showdown. Which comic book rumble was the real battle of the century? I'm assuming, Russ, you were the one that posted this in the show notes?
Of course.
You want to give us a little background on
Well,
this?
you know, there have been multiple books that said the battle of the century, this person versus that person, or the fight of the century. Well, there have been quite a few fights of the century, quite a few battles.
This is a long ass article, dude.
It is, if you care to read it. So the idea here is to say, what was or would have been your fight of the century in Marvel or DC or crossover or whatever? What do you think was the fight of the century for you? What got you most hyped?
I think Hulk versus Thing is always that feels like a very classic, fight.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that stood out to me when I first scrolled through here.
Yeah, I'm always down to see a Hulk versus Thing fight, even though you know Thing is not strong enough.
Yeah,
but Thing has so much heart.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yes, Hulk versus Thing fight. But if you go farther back, they got stuff far back as World War II comics where they have Submariner versus the original Human Torch.
Yeah.
Right. And they were the biggies back then, right? The water versus fire, strength versus strength.
I mean, this article also has like Joe Beluga and
Well, it all depends on if you like Archie books, there's got to be something here for you too, right?
Yeah.
I like how they try to make the Thing formidable when it comes to the Hulk. Like they try to depower the Hulk and amplify the Thing's fight. But the only thing that the Thing has on the Hulk maybe is his indomitableness, but that actually is counteracted by the Hulk's rage. The Hulk is just an unstoppable force because his rage makes it stronger if you follow this incarnation of the Hulk. Whereas the Thing can get tired. Like, yes, he has great stamina and he's a powerhouse in and of himself, but he's going to fail every time. He tries to get back up. But what happens when you get knocked the fuck out? You cannot get back up.
That's funny because there was a book where there was one of the cosmic orders of people called the Champion. You have the Collector, you have all these other cosmic Marvel characters. And the Champion wanted to see who was the best fighter. So they got all the strongest people to go into a ring and fight the Champion. And this was a miniseries, right? And Colossus went in there and he went for his, but is Colossus as strong as the Thing? Would you say yes or no?
No, I don't think
Colossus
so.
got beat down, but he had heart, right? And then you had the Hulk went in there, and the Hulk was just so mad he turned full-on monster. And the guy says, I'm not going to fight somebody who is not really, and just dismisses him. So the Hulk was out of it. And in the end, the Thing won. Because even though the Thing was outclassed, even though the Thing was beat, he still got up, right? Blood coming off his rocks and everything else. And say, maybe I'm just too stupid to give up. But I'm not giving up because this is the fate of the earth. So you're going to have to beat me to death in order to get to the earth, right? And the Champion relented because of his wondrous heart. I think it was called Contest of Champions. Let me see if it was original Contest of Champions.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds like that might be. Sounds familiar.
Guardian.
Right. So it was a series. There's actually a game, a Marvel game, mobile game, I think, called Contest of Champions too. But if you care to play, but anyway, this is what the thing was. The thing is in the he can't beat Thor, and they disqualified Thor because Thor wouldn't remove his hammer. By the way.
Oh, there's no way. Yeah, he should have to definitely get rid of the hammer.
Right. And then you know how I think. Thor ain't nothing but Luke Cage without that hammer. He ain't all that. But of course they really upped and really powered him. But this was back in the day when if he wasn't holding the hammer for 60 seconds, he would turn back to Donald Blake.
Yeah.
So he couldn't. And so and that's one of the reasons why these other people who would beat him, the Thing won. So back to the conversation. Yes. It's something about the Thing that make you believe in him. Like maybe even though you know he can't win, you still want to see him try. You still want to see him put it down, right? So anyway, that's my thought on that.
This article even goes on. There's Superman versus Spider-Man. There is the Justice League versus the Avengers, I think. Marvel versus DC. Spider-Man versus Superman's kind of goofy because, I mean, obviously Superman wins that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But
they did something.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
What are the conditions in which they would actually fight each other? Like that's the.
Well, that whole book sets that up.
Yeah, that's
right. And then they took a little power away from Superman and they powered up Spider-Man, unbeknownst to either of them, until at the last minute when Superman had to pull his punch. Right at the last minute, and the shockwave still threw Spider-Man across the city. And Spider-Man was like, ow, my fist, right?
Watching the wall.
This was more about, you just pick, remember when there was X-Men versus the Teen Titans? You never read that book, did you?
No, I don't think I ever did.
See, there's something you need to read. Shame on you if you're going to dig in the crates. X-Men versus Teen Titans, man. Logan versus Logan.
Yeah.
Anyway, this just to think about what, so obviously for you guys, it's Hulk versus, right? Not like Damian Wayne versus Nightwing, right? That's not the battle of the century.
I don't think that would be the battle of the century, no.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Spider-Man versus Superman, that might be, depending on whether or not Spider-Man can get his hands on some kryptonite.
Green Arrow versus Batman. Is that even a fight? Is Batman so much greater than Green Arrow? So much so that that's not even a fight?
I would say so.
No, I wouldn't say so, because the way they set it up in the CW series, didn't he train under some crazy
Ra's al Ghul?
Yeah. So...
Yeah, but you have Oliver Queen training underneath these fighters, but then you have Bruce Wayne training underneath fighters, scientists, ninjutsu, like all the magicians to be an escape artist, all these other different
in the whole package.
Yeah.
Yes, Batman is better, but in a fight,
you would use that package.
But I mean, you can't use your detective skills in the middle of a fight. You can't, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of escape artist skills in the middle of a fight. I'm just talking, put them in a ring and put boxing gloves on. Maybe on their feet too. MMA. We got to do MMA.
You remember that scene in Sherlock Holmes? I'm talking about Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes. I think it's one of the first
cartoony one. Where I hit him here. And
exactly.
And
what makes all this methodical? I would think that detective
is Batman a genius or is Batman really smart?
I think he has genius level intent.
And you're saying Green Arrow does not?
Yes. It's never been said that Green Arrow has a genius
you agree with that?
level.
I think they're both smart.
Batman
I think they're both smart and they got a lot of money. I don't think either one of them are geniuses.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that, when you look at, so Batman has to be tactical because he's human.
Yeah.
So he's good at it, right? Like a general would be good at it, right? And Superman doesn't have to be. Wonder Woman doesn't have to be. These other characters don't have to be, right? They
Yeah.
really lay into their powers. But Batman has to be,
So
because
does Green Arrow.
one blow could kill him. Same
Right.
thing with Green Arrow. So I think that's why they're more evenly matched. They both have to be tactical.
Yeah.
I don't think Batman actually has a super brain. Do you know they try to do that in the comic where they say Batman brain was, and then they backed off of that. He doesn't have a superpower.
Similar to the argument of like Lex Luthor. Remember that comic we just had about how he can ration and reason. I think his brain is very analytical.
Really smart. I give him really smart because the average person, average human, is not, right? By far. Right? Doesn't mean that these people are super geniuses. It just means that they have a practice of using their brain more often and more extensive and under more pressure. You do that for 10 years, it's great.
And the stories told of Green Arrow and the stories told of Batman more often than not has to escape by his wits, by his forethought, by his tacticality, more so than
I don't say more so, because Green Arrow really only got arrows. So he still gets in a whole bunch of situations where he's got to get no choice. He just happened, and he keeps his own. He got his own utility belt. He has little baby arrows on his sleeves and other things. All the same things Batman has. He doesn't have that one trick. A guy with arrows has to have tactical by its very nature.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. He's tactical, but just less so than Bruce Wayne.
But how do you measure how he's less tactical? How do you measure that?
By the amount of scrapes that he's gotten out of.
Only reason Batman got out of more scrapes is because there's more Batman comics. He got Batman, Detective Comics, all these other, right? And he's older. He's been around in the comic book universe, but that doesn't necessarily make him greater. That just means more stories.
Just like the
how many times Batman got trapped?
Just like the MTV death battles, claymation death battles.
Let's get it on.
Celebrity Deathmatch, yeah.
Celebrity Deathmatch, yeah. I think that was just dictated not by ability really, but by popularity. Who was more popular? And I think in this case, it would be the same. Who's more popular? And it hands down, it would be Batman.
Yeah, I will give an edge to Batman because Batman he doesn't do social life. So that energy you would put into social life, he puts into his work. This isn't a greater power. This is how he uses his ability. Like everyone has a certain amount of ability points, right?
Right.
Green Arrow puts some of his points into some Black Canary, right? Whereas, Bruce Wayne would put his ability points into more training or into weaponizing the moon, right? Both billionaires, both everything else. I won't say that he is better. I do think that even the other heroes think he is, and they allow him to be. And he does have a relationship with Superman that will beat out Green Arrow in that. And I don't think Green Arrow really wants to be Batman. But in the scheme of things, both of them have to rely on tactical and their wits and gadgets and utility belts and hitting whatever to win. They all do, right? There's no way, because Green Arrow don't even have a ballistic cape to hide behind. So he definitely has to be more tactical, right? Batman has stuff in his cowl. Like if you try to open his cowl up, gas will come out and gas you, so you can't take his cowl off, right? Whereas, but in the thick of it, I feel like Batman could say, Green Arrow, I need you to do this, and Green Arrow can get it done. No powers.
Yeah.
And Batman could just as easily as he gave it to Nightwing or anyone else, I think he can trust. He won't second guess Green Arrow. I think Batman is not in competition. Green Arrow may be in competition with Batman, but I don't think Batman's in competition with Green Arrow. He's just another hero, right? But Green Arrow keep bringing up, I'm just as good as you. I got money. I got an arrow cave, an arrow car, and a sidekick, right? And Batman be like, yeah, sure, whatever. Can we go fight Humpty Dumpty right now or something like that? You know what I mean? So there is some playfulness from Green Arrow that makes you think perhaps he's not as capable, but I think he is. But he's not putting his whole life on this as Batman is. Batman is not even trying. How long did it took Catwoman to put it on him when he finally gave her some? Right? The only reason he even has Damien is because he was raped by, Al Ghul, what's her name,
Talia.
Gas. He wouldn't even have that, right? I'm just saying. There was an original Batwoman back in the day that, was trying to get rid of him. That didn't work out either. Nobody, Bruce Wayne is just Bruce Wayne is the mask. Right? And then there's some insanity to Batman that we all have to agree that Green Arrow does not have.
Yeah, Green Arrow's definitely more well adjusted for sure.
Yes. But when it comes to ability, if I say now, it is very likely though that Batman has already had this scenario worked out. Green Arrow is not trying to come up with a scenario to beat every Justice Leaguer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Green Arrow is not trying to come up with a scenario like Black Panther has a scenario for every possible thing. So it's likely that Green Arrow will not have a pre-worked scenario. But off the cuff, whoever I send Batman after, I feel like I can send Green Arrow after. I'll bet you that even if it's a Kryptonian, Green Arrow got some green kryptonite in his belt somewhere. I know he does.
Yeah.
So, and they both got fighting skills. And they both have sidekicks. And, how there's Green Arrow, Speedy, Red Arrow. There's a couple of Red Arrows, a couple of Speedies. He doesn't have as many Robins. But that's because, Bruce Wayne ain't got enough to do. So he got to get him another Robin to keep his, thing going. But I won't say that Batman is by far. But I will give Batman an edge because of insanity and focus.
All right. All right. So, gentlemen, it's been another successful episode. 6 issues. Cornercomics.net. If you didn't catch us live, you can watch the archive of the show on our website. You can also find us on YouTube. If you're listening to us, you're probably listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. We appreciate you taking the time and downloading the podcast and listening to the audio version. This will be the last episode of Corner Comics for the time being. The show is going on a hiatus. I personally have some stuff that I want to work on and get out there, and I'm not entirely sure how long it's going to take. But Corner Comics will return. You can count on that. That will happen. We will do more episodes of these in the future. Even if we change the format, maybe in the future we'll do, if we haven't done an episode in a month or two, we do one episode that's 3 or 4 hours long, because a lot of times we sit and talk after the show's done anyway. So, do you guys have any you want to say before we close out the episode?
Read more comics. You're not reading enough. I guarantee you're not reading enough anyway. Might as well read some more comics.
That works for me. Manuel?
Consider Comixology, especially if you have an Amazon Prime subscription. There's a lot of stuff you can just read for fun and not cost you any additional money.
To piggyback off of that, it being January 10th, the year 2021, there's a lot of things coming up throughout the pipeline as far as Marvel. So delve deep, read more comics, be engaged, engage your friends. Now it's cool to be a geek. It's cool to be a nerd. It's cool to know these things and to talk amongst your friends. So build a good fanfare, have fun, enjoy life. Later days.
Oh, one more thing. Use the library. Your library, I go in the library now, and they have entire graphic novel sections, right?
Yeah.
And then you can get all this stuff digital on Hoopla. So you don't even have to go into the library. You can stay home and read entire graphic novels and plenty of books to read and never spend a single dime. So why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. All right. On that note, we're out. Sure you don't want to get something in at the tail end about secretions or bodily fluids?
You should check out Snot Girl, but other than that, that's actually a real comic.